fearful. And they sent it on to Ekron. And in Ekron, many of their men began to die and have tumors. And they said, you sent this to us to destroy us. So let us send it back to Israel. But if we're going to send it back to Israel, we better not send it back empty-handed. Let's send it back with a guilt offering. So they made the tumors out of gold, mice out of gold, and they was going to send it back to Jerusalem, or back to Israel. But before they did, they said, let's do one more test. Let's put it on a wagon. Let's have 2 milk cows that never had a bridle on before. And let's see if it will go the way it's supposed to go. And that will show us if this is their God. Well, the thing is, there's really 2 tests. One of them I recognized. The other one I didn't until Dad brought it up this past week when I was talking to him about this sermon. One, the fact that the milk cows had never had a bridle on before, they've never had a harness on, means that they're probably going to fight. They've not been broken to go in the same direction. It's going to be very difficult and chaotic. But also, they're being separated from their calves. And a cow that is separated from its calf will always go back to its calf. So they put the Ark of the Covenant on a wagon with the 2 milk cows, and it led its way back to Israel. And Israel once again had the Ark of the Covenant. But they placed it in a land and pretty much forgot about it in the time of Saul. But when David became king, he wanted that Ark of the Covenant to be in Jerusalem once again. So he goes and he begins to search for it. And they find it. And they put it on a wagon with some oxen, and they began to travel with it. But it begins to fall off the wagon, and a man by the name of Uzzah stuck out his hand. He touched the ark and he died. Because God's anger was kindled. Now, it sounds like he was trying to do a good thing, but you missed the point when an oxen isn't the way the Ark of the Covenant was supposed to be transported. It's to be transported by the priest. So David gets mad. And he says, I'm just going to leave the Ark of the Covenant here then. So it stays at a man named Obed-Edom. And Obed-Edom, as long as he had the Ark of the Covenant, everything he did prospered. David heard about it. So he went and got the ark. But this time he transported it the way it was supposed to. And as he begins to go into Jerusalem, he begins to dance in the streets. He dances in the streets in pretty much his underwear. Because he is just so happy that the Ark of the Covenant, the presence of God, is coming to Jerusalem. And his wife is not too happy. Michael tells him about it. And he says to her, I'll become even more undignified than this. I tell that story because it sets up the Psalms that we're in today. Because in Psalms 132, it's talking about when the Ark of the Covenant was brought to Jerusalem. It's talking about a time that David made an oath that he would find a resting place for God. So let's go ahead and start reading it. In Psalms 132, starting with verse 1. It says, Remember, O Lord, in David's favor, all the hardships that he endured, how he swore to the Lord a vow, to the mighty one of Jacob, I will not enter my house or get into my bed. I will not give sleep to my eyes or slumber to my eyelids until I find a place for the Lord, a dwelling place for the mighty one of Jacob. Do you see his dedication? Do you see his love? The fact that he makes this vow, now he's not taking it literally. He's not saying that I won't sleep, but he won't sleep peacefully. Knowing that there is not a resting place for this Ark of the Covenant. Now, why is this wooden box so precious? Why is it? It's not important because it's got a lot of gold on it. It's not important because it's got the 10 Commandments within it, Aaron's rod that had budded, and a jar of manna. That's not why it's important. The reason it's important is because it represents the very presence of God. So we see David's dedication and his love for God, that he will not rest until he finds a dwelling place for the very presence of God. He wants it to be in the city with him. How about you? How dedicated are you to being in the very presence of God? Because we have far greater ability to come in his presence now than he did. How dedicated are we truly? Goes on and says, behold, we heard of it in Ephraim. We have found it in the fields of Jaar. Let us go to his dwelling place. Let us worship at his footstool. Arise, O Lord, and go to your resting place, you and the ark of your might. Let your priests be clothed with righteousness, and let your saints shout for joy. For the sake of your servant David, do not turn away the face of your anointed. This is quoted by David when he was dedicating the temple to God. So many believe this psalm was either written by David or for David for the dedication of the temple. And what we see here is a plea. In verse 1, when he says, remember, O Lord, the psalmist is not saying, God, you've forgotten. I want to remind you about something. So listen up. You might have heard this story before, but I want to remind you about it, God. No, every time that the word remember is used, it is a call to action. Either on God's behalf or our behalf. So they're calling God to do something, to arise, to go to his resting place, to have the priest clothed in righteousness. And in verse 11, we get God's oath to David. It says, the Lord swore to David a sure oath for which he will not turn back. One of the sons of your body I will set on your throne, if your sons keep my commandment and my testimonies, that I shall teach them. Their sons also forever shall sit on your throne. For the Lord has chosen Zion. He has desired it for his dwelling place. This is my resting place forever. Here I will dwell, for I have desired it. I will abundantly bless her provisions. I will satisfy her poor with bread. Her priest I will clothe with salvation, and her saints will shout for joy. There I will make a horn to sprout from David. I have prepared a lamp for my anointed. His enemies I will clothe with shame, but on him his crown will shine. I want us to notice something. In the first half of the psalm, we notice there is a petition. There's a cry to God. In the second half, we see that cry answered. The interesting thing to me is when God answers a plea or a petition, he usually goes way beyond what we could ever imagine. Because God's covenant with David is that he would set a son on his throne. And it says, if your sons keep my commandments and my teachings, then I'll teach them. And we know. We know after Solomon, the kingdom split in two. The northern part of Israel. Then you had the southern part of Judah. The majority of Israel's kings were very wicked. So in 722 BC, the Assyrians came in and destroyed them. Judah, where Jerusalem is, luckily had some pretty good kings, but they had some very wicked ones too. So in 586 BC, the Babylonians came in and destroyed Jerusalem and took them off into captivity. So they couldn't keep his command. But living in the new covenant, we realize that God made a covenant with us, ultimately with David, that is unconditional. That it doesn't depend on our actions. It depends on his love. So the covenant that he made was far greater than they could have ever imagined. Because we know that there is a Son who sits on the throne of David forever. It's not exactly what they had thought, but it's far greater than they could have ever imagined. I told this story in Sunday school and Wednesday night, but imagine as a father, this is before cars is invented, a father tells his son, when you turn 16, I'm going to buy you a horse. By the time the boy turns 16, the car is invented. And when the boy walks out of the house on his 16th birthday, he doesn't see a horse. He sees a car. Do you think the boy's going to go, but Dad, you said on my 16th birthday I was going to get a horse, not a car? No. He would be thrilled because it's something that was far greater than he could ever have imagined. That's the fulfillment that God has for us. Jesus' fulfillment of the covenant that he will set on the throne forever. Far greater than we could ever imagine, because he defeated our enemy, Satan. Not the physical enemy that we face, but the enemy that keeps us from having a relationship with him. We even see it a little bit onward when their petition was, let your priest be clothed with righteousness. Well, God says, well, I'll clothe your priest with salvation. And your saints will shout for joy, not just for a moment. Remember, his kingdom is established forever. Your saints, you will shout with joy for all eternity. Why? Because we know the King that is sitting on the throne. He is our Father. He's our friend. He's our Lord. And because he is on the throne, we do not have to be afraid, because that's what verse 17 is talking about there. I will make a horn to sprout from David. A horn here, what it means is strength. There is going to be strength that comes with this new king. I've prepared a lamp. Now there's two different ways of looking at that. The lamp could mean clarity, or it could mean basically longevity. It's going to last for a very long time, all eternity. And the crown represents his dignity. We see that God answers our prayers. He answers our petitions far greater than we could ever imagine. Now remember the story of the ark. The reason the ark is so important was because it represented the very presence of God. Let me tell you another story about a potter and his clay. The potter got this piece of clay and he began to mold it and to form it to how he wanted it to be, exactly the way that he wanted. So that when he finished, he looked at it and he says, this is my masterpiece. This is my, in the Greek it would be poime. It's where we get our English word poem. This is my masterpiece. And he loved his masterpiece so much that he decided that his dwelling place is going to be within his masterpiece. And just as the law was in the Ark of the Covenant, God says in Jeremiah, I will put my law within them. I will write my law in their hearts. Many things that Aaron's rod that budded, it represented God-ordained leadership and priesthood. Well, he's told us that we are all part of a royal priesthood. The manna, we've got something that's far greater. Even though manna was the bread the angels ate, we've got a better bread that represents something far greater. I want you to know just how important you are. Because we look at the Ark of the Covenant, we say, well, just how wonderful that is. We see how excited they were when it came into Jerusalem. But you know what? You represent the very presence of God to the world. You are his masterpiece. He's formed you exactly the way that he has wanted to form you. He has put himself within you so that you can be his very presence to everyone else. The question is, are you living like that?